The morning Raymond Cole was handed the key to the corner office on the 41st floor, his daughter was standing outside her school auditorium in a sequined dress, scanning every face coming through the door. She scanned them for 2 hours. His face was not there. He found out 3 weeks later, when he overheard Teresa telling her sister on the phone. Not from Nora. Nora had stopped telling him things the way a person stops knocking on a door that never opens. Gradually, without announcement, the knocking simply ceasing one day, and you only notice when the silence has already become the new arrangement. He stood in the hallway outside the kitchen, briefcase still in hand, coat still on, keys still in his fist, and heard his wife say in a voice that had gone very quiet and very careful. She looked for him until the lights went down. Then she just went on. He didn't walk in. He set the briefcase on the floor, very carefully, as though setting it down roughly might break something. He stood in the dark of that hallway for a long time with the specific kind of shame that doesn't come with noise, the kind that simply settles into the chest like sediment and stays. Raymond had a habit that nobody ever mentioned, but everyone who spent time with him remembered. He carried a small notebook, green-covered, slightly worn at the spine, and whenever something mattered to him, he pressed his thumb against the bottom corner of it. Not writing, not reading, just touching it the way a person touches a scar to check if it still hurts. He had done it the morning Nora was born. He had done it the day they buried his father. He pressed his thumb to that corner now, standing in the dark hallway, and the feeling he got back was nothing he could name. What Raymond Cole wanted was proof. That was the truth beneath everything. Proof that he had not become his father. A man who had built a hardware store from nothing, brick by patient brick, only to watch a chain retailer arrive in their town and swallow it in 6 weeks without blinking. He had stood at 16 years old watching that man. A man who knew which screw belonged in which wall of every house on the block. Carry boxes out of his own store like he was the one trespassing. That image had never left. It had become the engine beneath every early morning, every midnight email, every birthday dinner he had arrived at late and left early. He would not be the man carrying boxes. He would build something no one could take. He had not yet understood that the thing no one could take was already standing in the kitchen making dinner for a daughter who had stopped looking for him. Raymond was a senior director at the Alderton Group. 12 years. He had built the client retention framework the company now ran on, rebuilt a collapsing account relationship that saved $60 million in 1 quarter, and arrived before anyone else every morning for a decade. What he had not done was make sure anyone knew which hands had done the building. That was his flaw, a bone-deep, self-defeating pride that made him treat self-promotion like dishonesty. He did the work and expected the work to speak. In most organizations, work speaks in a whisper. What shouts is visibility. Garrett Finch had understood this from his first week. Garrett had joined the Alderton Group 3 years after Raymond. He wore better suits. He laughed at exactly the right volume. Where Raymond built things, Garrett arrived near finished buildings and shook hands with the people who were relieved. He had a talent, real talent, not fake, for reading what a room needed to believe and giving it that thing at precisely the right moment. He was not a fraud. He was something more dangerous. A man who understood that in organizations, perception is the product. There was one thing about Garrett that Raymond noticed and filed away. Every time Garrett talked about loyalty or gratitude, his eyes moved, just barely, to the left of the person he was speaking to. Not rudely, microscopically, like he was checking a door behind them. Raymond noticed. He said nothing. He should have said something, not to anyone at work, but to himself. He should have understood what it meant about the territory ahead. The corner office lasted 4 months. The Alderton Group lost 2 major contracts inside 1 quarter, and the board made the kind of decision that arrives dressed in phrases like strategic realignment and optimizing talent deployment. What it meant was this: Garrett Finch would lead the newly formed Strategic Growth Division. Raymond Cole would be reassigned as Regional Director of Mid-Atlantic Operations, a title that sounded lateral and functioned as a slow erasure. Garrett sat on the selection committee. Raymond found out from someone in payroll who said the wrong thing in a corridor 3 days before the announcement. 3 days of knowing. 3 days of pressing his thumb to the corner of the green notebook and getting nothing back. He told himself it was temporary. He began the 2-hour drive to the Whitmore, Pennsylvania office on Monday mornings before the city woke up, the highway dark and empty in front of him. He told himself this was a test, not a verdict. He ate dinner every Tuesday at the same corner booth of a diner on Route 30, alone, with reports he was no longer sure anyone read, and he drove home Thursday nights with his hands tight on the wheel and a specific, growing silence in his chest that he could not locate or explain. Teresa felt it before he named it. She was like that. She had always been able to read the weather of him before he knew a storm was coming. One Sunday morning she set coffee on his desk without being asked, sat in the chair across from him at a slight angle, the way she sat when she wanted to be a presence, not a confrontation, and waited. He looked at her. He almost said it. He almost said, "I think I'm disappearing. I think I've been so afraid of becoming my father that I've turned into something he would not recognize and would not choose. I think I've been building the wrong things in the wrong direction and I don't know how to stop." He said, "There may be a change at work." She nodded. Slowly. Her hand moved to his arm and stayed there for one moment, warm, steady, the hand of a person who has not yet stopped trying, and then she went back to the kitchen. He sat with his coffee going cold and understood, in a way he couldn't fully hold yet, that he had just been offered something and had handed it back. At home, 3 nights a week when he was actually there, the distance between them had acquired a specific texture. Teresa managed everything. The school schedule, the house, the appointments, the dinners. She did it with a quiet competence that looked, from the outside, like contentment. But there was an evening, a Tuesday he had driven home early because a meeting canceled, when he came through the door and found her sitting at the kitchen table after Nora had gone to bed. Not reading, not on her phone. Just sitting in the kitchen in the silence with a cup of tea gone cold in front of her, and when she heard him come in she looked up and there was something in her face, something raw and tired that she put away quickly, the way you close a drawer before anyone sees what's in it. She said, "You're home early." He said, "Meeting canceled." She nodded and got up to heat his dinner, and they talked about nothing for 20 minutes. And when he lay in bed that night, he stared at the ceiling and understood that he had seen something important and had no idea what to do with it. Nora had stopped asking when he was coming to things. That was the development that arrived without announcement. He realized it at her spring concert, the one he did attend, arriving 8 minutes late and standing at the back in his work coat, when she walked off stage and found him. Her face went through something complicated. It moved through surprise, then something warmer, then something careful, and stopped there. Not happy. Careful. The face of someone who has revised their expectations downward to protect themselves from a height they no longer trust, and who is no longer sure whether being surprised matters more than being safe. He hugged her. He said she was great. She said thanks, did. On the drive home he bought her a gift card online from his phone at a red light, as though the gesture could retroactively be in 2 places at once. He pressed his thumb to the green notebook at the next light and felt, for the first time, not steadiness but the faint, specific nausea of a man who suspects he is too late. Then Garrett did the second thing. The Alderton board was building a senior advisory council, a governance restructuring, and the chair had privately reached out to 2 internal directors for input. Raymond was one. He spent 2 weeks on his recommendation, careful and thorough, naming people on his team who deserved the visibility, identifying expertise the company genuinely needed. It was some of the clearest thinking he had produced in 2 years. He sent it on a Wednesday morning and sat in his Whitmore office feeling, for for the first time in months, like himself. Thursday afternoon, the chair replied in 3 sentences. Raymond's regional position represented a structural complexity that made his advisory input difficult to incorporate at this stage. His recommendation was noted. He read it twice. He called Garrett. He did not plan to call Garrett. His hand moved to his phone and dialed before the thinking part of him had caught up with the furious part, and Garrett answered on the second ring in a voice that was warm and completely unsurprised, as though he had been expecting this call and had prepared the right weather for it. Raymond said, "Was it you?" Not a question. Garrett heard the difference. There was a pause, short, controlled, the pause of a man who had rehearsed his options. Then Garrett said, "Raymond, I think the committee made the right call for where things stand right now. Regional leadership is a different." Raymond hung up. He sat in the empty office with his phone in his hand and a feeling in his chest that was not quite rage and not quite grief, but something that lived between them. The feeling of understanding, finally and completely, that the game had been different from the one he'd been playing, and he had been the last to figure that out. Thursday afternoon, the chair's reply sat unanswered in his inbox. His recommendation was noted. He stared at the email. He knew what had happened. He just had no way to prove it. No name, no timestamp, no forwarded thread. Just the shape of a door closing and the faint sound of it latching from the other side. He called his mother that night. She was home, had been home for weeks after a hospital stay that had lasted 4 days. 4 days during which he had visited once, on a Saturday afternoon, for 90 minutes, on his way back from a client meeting he'd rescheduled twice. He had brought flowers. He had checked his phone twice. He had kissed her forehead on the way out and said he'd be back next weekend. He had not been back next weekend. She answered on the second ring. Her voice had the particular quality it always had on the phone with him. Careful, warm, not wanting to be a burden, the voice of a woman who had long ago accepted that her son was busy and had trained herself to be glad for whatever portion of him was available. She asked how he was. He said fine, work was complicated, how was she feeling? She said she was fine, the knee was better, the neighbor had brought food. They talked for 7 minutes. When he hung up, he sat in his Whitmore office long after the building had emptied and looked at his hands flat on the desk. The hands of a man who had visited his mother once in a hospital and brought flowers and left in 90 minutes. He was 47 years old. He had not been to his daughter's last 3 school events. He had visited his mother once in the hospital. He had looked at his wife's face in a dark kitchen and chosen to eat dinner instead of asking what was wrong. He had spent 2 decades at war with a fear so old he had forgotten what the original wound felt like, building walls against something that had already happened long before he started building. He pressed his thumb to the green notebook, and for the first time, the touch felt like a question he could no longer answer. He drove home that night. He did not call ahead. It was a Thursday, not his Thursday, and when he opened the front door, Nora was at the kitchen table with a textbook, and she looked up and said, "Dad." The way you say a word when you've stopped expecting it to be true and it turns out to be true anyway. Something in that single syllable broke through something in him that had been sealed for a long time. Teresa came around the corner, dish towel in hand, and stopped. She looked at him. Not at his face, at him. The way she used to look before they started talking around things. He didn't say anything. She said, "Sit down," and she heated something up, and the 3 of them sat around that table for 2 hours, talking about the science project, the teacher Nora found irritating, a neighbor's dog that had gotten loose 3 times this week. Ordinary. Completely ordinary. And Raymond sat inside it and understood that this precise, unremarkable, beloved ordinary thing was the life he had been financing from a distance and had almost let expire while he was busy proving something to a 16-year-old boy who no longer existed. He slept 8 hours. He had not slept 8 hours in 4 years. The envelope came to his Whitmore office 22 days later. Hand addressed. No company logo. A name in the return corner that meant nothing to him, Peter Groves. He almost set it aside. He opened it instead. The handwriting inside was careful, slightly tilted, like someone who had been taught by a person who believed letters mattered. Asterisk, my name is Peter Groves. You won't remember me. 8 years ago, on a Wednesday night in a parking structure on Arch Street in Philadelphia, you changed my tire. You didn't just change it, you stayed. My phone was dead. My daughter was in a hospital across the city. I was one of those men who never asked for help, and I was out of every option I had, and you stayed for 40 minutes in a parking garage that smelled of exhaust and concrete until my wife arrived. Asterisk. Asterisk, I never got your name. I only got your license plate, and it took me a long time to find you, and I want you to know why I looked. Asterisk. Raymond read that paragraph 3 times. He had no memory of the event. Not a fragment, not a flicker. He had no memory of a parking garage or a stranger or 40 minutes on a Wednesday night. That was the thing that reached into his chest and grabbed something and would not let go. He had done it and walked away from it so completely that it had not left a single trace. He had gone home that night and eaten dinner and slept and never once looked back. The act that had moved through 8 years and changed the trajectory of a family had been, to him, as unremarkable as checking the mail. He had given the most significant 40 minutes of a stranger's life without noticing he was giving them. The letter went on. Peter Groves' daughter was named Sophia. She was 15 now. She had grown up with a father who had made it to the hospital that night, who had been there when she was discharged the next morning, who had shown up, who had not let her down in the specific way that fathers can let children down that children carry for the rest of their lives. Peter had spent the years since showing up. He had coached her science team. He had sat in the auditorium for every performance. He had built the habit of arrival into his parenting the way some people build it into their faith. With intention, with consistency, with the understanding that presence is a practice, not an instinct. Sophia had just won a regional aerospace engineering competition. She was being recruited by 3 universities. Peter Groves had recently been appointed to the advisory board of the Alderton Group's new governance restructuring committee. He had read every recommendation submitted to the chair. He had recognized Raymond's name. The letter ended, asterisk, I don't make promises about outcomes. But I want you to know, the man who stayed in a parking garage is not invisible to me. He has never been invisible. I don't know what you need right now. I only know what you gave me then, and I have been carrying it for 8 years looking for a way to return it. Asterisk. Raymond put the letter down on the desk. He put both hands flat on either side of it. The office was empty, the building quiet, afternoon light coming through the window at a low angle and falling across his hands. He thought about 40 minutes in a parking garage he could not remember. He thought about 2 hours at a kitchen table he would never forget. He had spent 8 years not thinking about the parking garage. He had spent 2 decades trying to build something permanent, something visible, something that would prove once and for all that the 16-year-old boy watching his father carry boxes had grown into someone who could not be moved. And in all that building, all the spreadsheets and midnight emails and missed concerts and cold dinners and careful professional calculations, the thing that had actually moved the world was something he had done in the dark, alone, with nothing to gain, because a man was in trouble and Raymond was the person standing there. He opened the green notebook. He had carried it for 12 years. He had pressed his thumb to its corner in elevators and parking lots and hospital waiting rooms and desperate Thursday evenings in empty offices. He had never written a single word in it. He had bought it the week his father's store closed, the week he made his silent, terrified promise, and he had never found words equal to what he was carrying. He wrote 3 words. He did not share them with anyone. Some things are between a person and the part of themselves they've been arguing with for 20 years. What happened at the Alderton Group was not dramatic. Life does not often give dramatic reversals. What Peter Groves did was quieter and more durable. He raised Raymond's submitted recommendation in the committee meeting not as a favor, but as a specific, substantive, documented argument for its quality. He named its strengths. He asked others to read it. 3 board members who had never looked at Raymond directly read it for the first time. One of them called Raymond the following Tuesday. The call lasted 50 minutes. If the architecture of this story just landed for you, if you felt the weight of what was moving underneath all those years without Raymond knowing, share this right now with someone who needs to hear it. Some people are in the parking garage of their life right now. They don't know what they're building. Share it. Raymond was not given back the corner office. He was not made whole in one gesture. What he was offered was a seat at the table where the decisions happened. A real seat, doing real work, contributing to a process that would outlast both Garrett Finch's quarter and Raymond's resentment. It was not everything he had wanted. It was better. It was the kind of work that felt like his hands were actually on something. Garrett's division posted a difficult second quarter. The accounts were thinner than projected. The restructuring had moved too fast and left gaps that were now, quietly at cost, being filled by the people he had moved aside. No loud collapse. Garrett was too skilled for that. But the room that had once turned toward him began to settle at a different angle, the way a compass needle corrects without ceremony when it finally finds true north. Raymond drove back to Whitmore on a Monday morning to clear his office. He would be based in the city again. The drive was different in a way that had nothing to do with the road. He stopped at the diner on Route 30. Margot, the Tuesday waitress who had somehow materialized on a Monday, brought coffee before he asked. She said, "You look different." He said, "I think I am." She said, "Good different?" He thought about it the way you think about something when the answer actually matters. "Lighter," he said. She nodded and walked back across the room without making it into more than it was, which was exactly the right thing. He called his mother from the car before he started the drive home. She picked up on the second ring and he said, "I've been meaning to come and I keep not coming and I want to fix that." She said, "Raymond." Just his name, the way mothers say a child's name when what they mean is far too large for any other word. He said he would be there on Saturday. She said she would make the soup he liked. He made the drive. He sat at her kitchen table for 4 hours. She talked about the neighbor's dog, a television show, the way the light came through the window in the afternoon now that they had trimmed the tree. He listened. He did not check his phone. When he drove home, the road in front of him was dark and the car was quiet and he thought about his father, not the man carrying boxes, but the man who had come home that same evening and sat at the table and asked Raymond what he'd learned in school that day. He thought about how his father had spent the decade after the store closed fixing neighbors' porch steps and teaching a church group woodworking and driving 40 minutes to watch a grandchild take 3 steps across a living room floor. Arriving with a camera, laughing at a volume that made a room feel larger. Never once mentioning the store, the boxes, the chain retailer that had swallowed 30 years of work in 6 weeks. He had watched that as diminishment for 30 years. He had built his entire life as a fortress against it. Every early morning, every missed concert, every careful professional calculation a brick in the wall between himself and the fate he feared. He had believed his father had settled, had surrendered, had chosen small. He understood now, on a dark road outside the city where his family was awake and waiting, that his father had not surrendered a single thing. He had lost a store. He had kept himself. He had walked out of that building carrying boxes and walked into the rest of his life with both hands free. Free to fix the porch step, to hold the grandchild, to laugh loud in a room that needed it. The man Raymond had spent 20 years refusing to become was the man Raymond had been trying to find his entire adult life, disguised as defeat. He pulled into the driveway. The lights of the house were on. He sat in the car for a moment. Through the front window he could see the kitchen light, and the shadow of movement, and the faint sound of the television from Nora's room. The house was full of life that had been happening without him, stubbornly, faithfully, the way good things wait for people who are worth waiting for. He went inside. Teresa was at the kitchen counter with her back to him. She heard the door and said, without turning, "There's food if you're hungry." He crossed the kitchen and stood behind her and put his arms around her from behind. Not romantically, not with explanation, just with the full weight of a man who has finally stopped moving and wants to be in the room he's standing in. She went still. Her hands stopped what they were doing. Then she put both her arms over his and held on, and they stood like that in the kitchen while Nora's television played something from upstairs and the neighbor's dog barked twice and went quiet. No speech. No list of promises. No transaction. Just two people standing in a kitchen, one of them finally home. He pressed his thumb to the green notebook in his jacket pocket. The touch was not a question anymore. It was an answer. There is a kind of man who looks back at 47 and counts what he has built, the titles, the floors, the proofs, and finds the number correct and the chest empty. He stands at the window of the corner office and the view is everything he said he wanted, and it feels like standing outside a house with your face against the glass. Raymond had been that man. He had been so busy being that man that he almost missed the moment when he stopped being him. There is a kind of moment, if a person is fortunate and still paying some kind of attention, when something small and forgotten returns from the past and shows you what your hands were actually doing all along, in the spaces between the building, in the 40 minutes in a cold parking garage when nobody was watching, in the coffee set wordlessly on a desk, in the voice of a 13-year-old girl saying "Dad" like it might actually be true. The hand that changed a tire in the dark was the same hand that pressed a green notebook in an empty office. The same hand that held his daughter the day she was born. The same hand his wife covered with her own on a Sunday morning when he almost told the truth and didn't. He had not lost those years. They had been happening. All of it, every unremarkable Tuesday, every school night, every ordinary dinner, it had all been the actual life. He had been financing it from the outside like a man who builds a beautiful house and lives in the driveway. He could still go inside. He had. If someone came to mind while you listened to this, someone you have been meaning to call, a door you have been standing outside of, a moment you are still in time for, don't let this story be something you watched. Let it be something that moved you to do the one thing you have been waiting to do. This is God's Hand Stories, where every story has a hand behind it you didn't see until the very end.